Srimad Bhagawatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 16, Text 11. Ye Brahmanan Mai Hiya Kshipato Archayantaha. Ye Brahmanan Mai Hiya Kshipato Archayantas. Turshyad Hrida Smita Sudhokshita Padma Vaktra Turshyadridha Smita Sudhokshita Padma Vaktra Vanyanuraga Kalayatmujavad Granantaha Vanyanuraga Kalayatmujavad Granantaha Sambodhayanti Aham Ivaham Upahritas Tai Sambodhayantyaham Ivaham Upahritas Tai Ye Brahmanan Maidhya Kshipitorchayantas. What if we slowed down? Maybe that would.
Yes.
Turshyadridha Smita Sudhokshita Padma Vaktra Vanyanuraga Kalayatmajavad Granantaha Sambodayantyaham ivaham upahritaste. Please chant.
Ye Brahmanan Maitya Kshipato Chayantas.
Brahmanan Maitya Shipito Jayantas.
Tushyadrita Smita Subhokshita Padmavakra.
Turyadrita Smita Subhokshita Padmavakra.
Vanyanuraga Kalayatma Javagrananta. Sambodayantyaham ivaham upavrtastai.
Ye Brahmana Maidyakshapato Rachayantas. Tushadidashmita Shudokshita Padmavakra. Vanyanuraga Kalayatma Javadrinanta. Sambodayanti aham ivaham upartastai. Ye Brahmana Maidyakshapato Rachayantas. Tushadidashmita Shudokshita Padmavakra. Vanyanuraga Kalayatma Javadrinanta. Sambodayanti aham ivaham upartastai.
Yea, which persons? Brahmanan, the Brahmanas, Mai, in me, Dhiya, with intelligence, Kshipataha, uttering harsh words, Archayantaha, respecting, Turshyat, gladdened, Hridaha, hearts, Smita, smiling, Sudha, nectar, Ukshita, wet, Padma, lotus-like, Bhaktra, faces, Varnya, with words, Anuraga Kalaya, loving, Atmajavat, like a sun, Gurnantaha, praising, Sambodhayanti, pacified, Aham, I, Eva, as, Aham, I, Upahritaha, being controlled, Tai, by them. On the other hand, they captivate my heart, who are gladdened in heart, and who, their lotus faces enlightened by nectarian smiles, respect the Brahmanas, even though the Brahmanas utter harsh words. They look upon the Brahmanas as my own self, and pacify them by praising them in loving words, even as a son would appease an angry father, or as I am pacifying you. Purport. It has been observed in many instances in the Vedic scriptures that when the Brahmanas or Vaishnavas curse someone in an angry mood, the person who is cursed does not take it upon himself to treat the Brahmanas or Vaishnavas in the same way. There are many examples of this. For instance, the sons of Kuvera, who, when cursed by the great sage Narada, did not seek revenge in the same harsh way, but submitted. Here also, when Jaya and Vijaya were cursed by the four Kumaras, they did not become harsh towards them. Rather, they submitted. That should be the way of treating Brahmanas and Vaishnavas. One may sometimes be faced with a grievous situation created by a Brahmana, but instead of meeting him with a similar mood, one should try to pacify him with a smiling face and mild treatment. Brahmanas and Vaishnavas should be accepted as earthly representatives of Narayana. Nowadays, some foolish persons have manufactured the term Daridra Narayana, indicating that the poor man should be accepted as the representative of Narayana. But in Vedic literature, we do not find that poor men should be treated as representatives of Narayana. Of course, those who are protected are mentioned here. Unprotected, quote unquote. Those who are unprotected are mentioned here. But the definition of this phrase is clear from the Shastras. The poor man should not be unprotected, but the Brahmana should especially be treated as the representative of Narayana and should be worshipped like him. It is specifically said that to pacify the Brahmanas, one's face should be lotus-like. A lotus-like face is exhibited when one is adorned with love and affection. In this respect, the example of the fathers being angry at the son and the sons trying to pacify the father with smiling and sweet words is very appropriate. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Svapadanti. Ye Brahmanan Maidhya Kshipato Chayantas Tushyadridha Smita Sudhokshita Padma Vaktra Vanyanuraga Kalayatma Javadgarnanta Sambodhayantyahami Upahritastai. On the other hand, they captivate my heart. Upahritatai. I am controlled by them. They captivate my heart. Who are gladdened in heart. Those who are gladdened in heart captivate my heart. My heart is gladdened by their hearts. It's a very sweet, reciprocal. Tushyad Hridha. Tushyad Hridha. On the other hand, they captivate my heart, who are gladdened in heart, and who, their lotus faces enlightened by nectarian smiles, respect the Brahmanas, even though the Brahmanas utter harsh words. They look upon the Brahmanas as my own self and pacify them by praising them in loving words, even as a son would appease an angry father, or as I am pacifying you. A couple things popped into my head when I read that just now. One thing is to avoid being patronizing or condescending. There's one way of smiling at someone where it's sort of like, oh, you're an idiot. You know, like, who cares what you say? You know, I'm so far above you that I don't know if you've ever experienced that. I remember learning at a very young age how to really get my sister riled up. And one way of, you know, when you butt heads, when you're the littler sibling, you'll never win that battle. That's what she's looking for, is to get a rise out of you and get in a fight. Because she can physically dominate you, and she's got years on you, so she's smarter, she can find a way. But I remember from when I was very little, if she were getting very upset at me and saying mean things to try to get a rise out of me, if I just smiled at her and maybe even laughed, that would really get her going. So that's not the kind of smiling and lotus-like face we're seeing here. It's not in a condescending way. It's a genuine sentiment of peace and feeling good fortune that I'm being chastised. Vaisheshika Prabhu always says our slogan should be, I live to be corrected. I live to be corrected. It's such a sweet thing that, if your ego ever flares, if you feel like, why am I being told this? I know what's what. You just change it. Because even when you think those words, your face already shrivels up. Why am I? You can't say, why am I being corrected, with a smile. The second you say those words, even, your face kind of shrivels up into a lemon. Who are you to tell me anything? But here we're seeing, the two things that came into my head when I read this. One was the brahmanas that wouldn't attend to the needs of the cowherd boys. And Krishna smiled to his friends. He didn't join them in their anger. Oh, those nonsense rascals. He smiled. And the other one was Prahasaniva Bharata, that Arjuna's feeling great dismay on the battlefield. And Krishna's kind of looking at his despair. And what a situation. Our problems are just so... Gita is on such a grand scale. When you look at the culmination of everything that's happened in the Mahabharata up to this point, and here we're on this battlefield where Arjuna is expressing legitimate concerns. He has, a list. He came prepared. He has a list of grievances, things that are not going to go well. Reasons why this battle is really going to mess things up. And these are serious things. When you read it, if you actually put yourself in that position, it's heavy. And Krishna smiles. What heavy? Nothing is heavy here. It's like you're in a dream. Your responsibilities are without genuine consequence. The consequence is that you'll cycle in samsara as long as you're attached to it. We were just reading in the Isanga, Swapne Nartagamo Yata. There's a verse that appears 5 times in Srimad Bhagavatam. Trivita Prabhu pointed out to me, he said, if something appears twice, it's probably important. If something appears 5 times, you should probably learn it. And that verse says that the pernicious effects of a dream will continue to act as long as you relate to it. As long as you think you're being attacked by a tiger or a snake in your dream, you're going to suffer. When you disassociate yourself, you say, oh, this is a dream. Then suddenly you can, play with the tiger, pet it. Oh, it bit me. It's a dream. It doesn't have any effect. You wake up and your hand's fine. No blood. And so these experiences that we're having, auspicious and inauspicious, offense and glory, it's all temporary and has no effect, except if it's upsetting the devotees, or except if it's offending the Supreme Lord. We see that in the case of Jai and Vijay. Their knee-jerk reaction was to be afraid. Not because they were worried that, oh, I'm going to be punished. They were afraid that they had offended the Supreme Lord. They had offended the 4 Kumars. The 4 Kumars were clearly upset, and their instant thought was, maybe we have offended the Lord also. That's real. There's a plane of dream, of temporary nature. Naramate Buddha, an intelligent person, doesn't delight in that which has a beginning and an end. And then there's the eternal platform. And the eternal platform is the platform of service and loving reciprocation with the Lord. And when one offends the devotees of the Lord, then that's a cause for sadness. for contrition. Oh, I've done something wrong. Parikshit Maharaj garlanded the sage with a dead snake, and the second he walked away, oh, I've done something wrong. This is not good. When he gets cursed, he's not upset that he got cursed. He's upset that he had stepped wrong. And so that to cultivate that mood is very difficult, because in Kali Yuga, besides being short-lived, prayana, alpayusha shabhya, no, that's a different verse. In Jiva Goswami's Harinamamrit Vyakarana, a very similar verse is stated that Shamichan, that desiring the welfare of the very short-lived people of Kali Yuga, Jiva Goswami has strung together the names of the Lord in this. He's churned the ocean of Sanskrit grammar and produced the names of the Lord for the welfare of the short-lived people of Kali Yuga. You get to not only learn grammar, but hear the names of the Lord. Very sweet. But I'm thinking of that men are short-lived, ignorant, and above all, upadrita, disturbed. And you'll see if you catch someone in their best state, they can probably handle something. You know, if you pre-calculate, if you tell someone, if I let Steve know, hey, such and such is coming in hot, he's really angry at you, you know, be ready. And Steve can mentally prepare himself. Oh, okay, this person's upset. He can think ahead. How am I going to respond? And you respond very nicely. But if that person just comes in hot, slaps you in the face, whoa, when you're in a disturbed state, eyes get red, suddenly you're ready to swing. Because it's an emotional response, because you're already disturbed. That's why sometimes, you know, it's in all the things I've learned being a grahasta. When you're in a heated argument with your wife, to take some time apart, to come back to a state of in the mode of goodness where you can reciprocate lovingly is so valuable. And then one step up from that, even more powerful, is that even in a state of being disturbed, one doesn't lash out. Otherwise, you're just submitting to Kali Yuga. You're saying that, yeah, I can be tossed around by my emotions. In the 12th chapter of Gita, there's a whole slew of verses, actually most of it, or almost half of it, from verse 13 to 20, 7 verses, very short chapter, 20 verses. But from 13 to 20, each verse ends with, such a person is very dear to me. And, oh, there's so many good ones. The first one I learned of that whole bunch was Yasmin no dvijate loko, loka no dvijate jeha. That one who doesn't disturb anyone, and one who is not disturbed by anyone. Such a person, very dear to me. But I think in today's context, tulya ninda stutir mauni. Tulya ninda stutir mauni santushta yena kenachit. That one who is tulya, who remains equal in the face of ninda, criticism, and stuti, praise. We can understand how great one is to remain equipoised in the face of ninda, chastisement. But almost more amazing is to remain equipoised when you're being praised. There's a little something in the heart that feels like, yeah, I am pretty great. Someone says something, someone glorifies you, and you start feeling, oh, they've recognized. It was always there, but now they've recognized how great I am. But to remain equipoised in the face of, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada, I've heard said, the flatterer is my enemy. One who criticizes us is actually our greatest friend. Because if you're always told, oh, that's very good, then you never have impetus to improve. Oh, everything I do is so good. I don't know if it's a made-up story. My grandma told me a story when I was really little about, I don't know if it was a mother or a grandma, but the child's whole life, oh, that's very good, that's very good. And finally he's on death row for some heinous crime. And he wants to say something to her. And I might be totally messing this up, but she leans in to hear what he has to say, and what does he bite off her ear, or he does something awful? What is it?
It's an aunt.
It's his
that
aunt.
raised him, but never ever corrected him, never chastised him, never taught him properly. So
Does he bite off her ear?
Yes, he asked to see her, and when she came, he bit off her ear and he says, "Had you chastised me, I would not be going to." I think he was getting executed that day.
Yeah.
Probably tell the story.
So it's a nice lesson. Had you chastised me, I might have corrected my course. Tulya ninda sutir mauni, and silent. Santushta yena kenachit, happy in all circumstances, whatever position I'm in. Yena kenachit. And the only way to do that is yena kena prakarena manakrishna niveshaya. Earlier in this same group of verses, mayor mayarpita manobuddhi. Mayarpita manobuddhi. One who is always thinking of me. He is very dear to me. Anyway, it's a worthy, these middle 6 chapters concluding with the 12th chapter are considered the Bhakti Yoga chapters. And it's a real zinger. That 12th chapter just really drives it home. How to be dear to Krishna. How to serve Krishna in such a way that he's pleased. How to relate with others. And always thinking of Krishna is such a, these are the 2 principles that Rupa Goswami said. These are everything else, all the other vidhis and nishedhas, it's all serving, it's all kinkara to these 2 principles. Somehow or other, always remember Krishna, never forget. Santushta yena kenachit made me think of that classic verse. Whether you quote it as tasmat kena pyupayena or yena tena prakarena, the point is mana Krishna niveshaya. By some means or other, always remember Krishna. Yona hrishyati nantveshti. Anyway, so many, those verses are worth being studied. But the point being said here is that Krishna is very pleased with his devotees whose lotus faces. How do you get a lotus face? Prabhupada explains in the end of the purport. He says, a lotus-like face is exhibited when one is adorned with love and affection. How sweet. That the devotee feels genuine love and affection for everyone. And how, especially to one's own family, the Vaishnavas. How can one ever become sour and upset with the Vaishnavas? And of course, this is a goal to be aspired to. This is maybe for most of us a theoretical, because anyone who's lived in the company of Vaishnavas for a long time knows that there will be clashes. Sometimes it's, what do you do? Oh, okay, when someone is chastising me about something inconsequential, but what happens when 2 people have a disagreement about what should be done with, $100,000 donated to the temple? There's 2 very conflicting ideas, and it comes to an argument. There are some serious discussions. But the point being is that everything entered into from this place of love and devotion, it can be, Krishna will give the intelligence by which even difficult circumstances can be overcome. Tushya dridha. Gladdened in heart. Smita, smiling. So many examples of brahmanas chastising Prabhupada points out the sons of Kuvera. Manigriva and Nala Kuvera. Manigriva and Nala Kuvera. That one is short A. Kuvera, Nala Kuvera. Narada Muni passed by and they didn't have the decency to cover themselves. And he chastised them and they submitted. Instantly they were regretful. Throughout Shastra, there's unlimited examples of sages cursing and people responding sweetly. Except when Durvasa Muni came in hot criticizing Lord Ramchandra, then Lakshman wasn't so peaceful. But that's a special circumstance. And even then, Ram tried to pacify his brother. So I think the lesson there is that when someone else is being criticized, we should be very protective. When the Supreme Lord is being criticized, one should be very protective. Parvati didn't sit by and smile to her father when he spoke harsh words to Shiva. She said, this body isn't worth maintaining if it's connected with you. So it's not in every circumstance. But when one is attacked personally, when one is chastised personally, on that level one can see it as the mercy of the Lord. Who was it? We were just discussing the other day. Was it Mahaprabhu was chastising Jagadananda? Was it? I think Maharaj you were talking about. And I think Sanatana Goswami had said, oh, he's so fortunate. When will I get this mercy to be chastised by you? And it's such a sweet thing. Prabhupada said, I don't know the exact context, and maybe he said it multiple times, but that the spiritual master is expending the breath to chastise the disciple means affection. You really know you're in trouble when you're being ignored. When I no longer even give you the time of day, then you've really committed an offense. You're not even worth chastising. If you're worth chastising, it means you're worth being corrected. You're being shown affection. It's such a sweet thing. The spiritual master has no business getting right. You'd see devotees often recount times when Prabhupada would be so angry, furious, and then he'd turn and in a blink of an eye he'd be totally composed. It means he wasn't taken away by the mode of, ignorance and passion that in the heat of the moment he was going to say something regretful, and if you got him more riled up, then he'd get more riled. It was, he's angry and then he can reel it in. He has control over that emotion. It's a little bit different. I remember. Anyway, we won't go there. It was a time when my spiritual master was getting in a heated discussion with someone, and I had become a little bit frightened by it and thought maybe this fellow was being offensive, and so I stepped in and said, maybe it's time we separate. And Maharaj turned to me with a smile. He said, no, I'm talking with my friend. And then he turned back and started giving the sauce again. But it was just, the flip was so confusing to me. I realized, he's not actually upset. He's really trying to help this person understand that he stepped wrong. But it was just so funny. He turned to me and instantly he had a smile. I'm talking with my friend. I thought it was so sweet. And the difference is, I've noticed when I've had a discussion with my wife that became heated. It was so hard for me to turn it off and just say, I love you. Everything is fine. You want them to feel, you want them to hurt for what they did to you. It's like, you've really caused me sadness. You should understand what I feel. One time in the ocean, we were playing chicken fights. And I think I was on my sister's shoulders, and who were we with? It was, anyway, some of you might know the devotees, Sadhu and Yvette. A few of us were at Waimanalo Beach. And I was on my sister's shoulders, and she felt as though I were holding on too tight when we were falling over already. She felt like maybe I was, drowning her practically. She was like, let go. And she wanted me to understand. She said, let me show you what you did. And she climbed on my shoulders, but she did it extra viciously. And I was like, I didn't do that. I said, here, let me show you what you just did. of course, we were just playing and having fun, but we were laughing about it, that how it can escalate. That your perceived insult is so much worse than what was actually done. You know, when you're a little kid, someone gives you the Indian burn on your arm. They might do it lightly, and you get them back extra hard, and they use all their strength, and pretty soon, you know, you have a full-blown warfare. So perceived insult is such a thing, you know, how grand our ego is, how heightened our sensitivity to personal insult is, how ready we are to defend. Eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, 4 animalistic propensities, of which defense is the most prominent, Prabhupada says. We had that experience on the beach. We had found a nice shady spot. I was with my family. And this group of people came up and they were talking loudly. They had, who knows, some meat and beer in their coolers. And it was the last thing we wanted right next to us. And instantly our guards were up. How do we, you know, expand our circle, make sure that they have to find a different spot? You know, there's all this defense mentality. What right do we have to the beach? Everyone has access. But that defense, oh, this is our perimeter. You can't be within a certain, oh, you're talking too loudly. Defense. So all of these animalistic propensities can be subdued, especially tushyadriddha, when one's heart is gladdened through devotional service. How can one's heart be gladdened if one isn't peaceful? Ashantasya kutat sukham. There's no happiness when there's disturbance, upadrita, when one is disturbed, when one's knee-jerk reaction is to bite back. The envious nature, right? It's like a snake or a centipede. It's like you touch it, the instant response is bite. One shouldn't be envious like a snake. One shouldn't be ready to bite the second one is offended. One person asked my spiritual master recently in one of the classes. By the way, he's coming on Monday. So there will be classes. He holds regular classes by Zoom on Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday from 2 to 3 p.m. And whoever is available is welcome to join. Live audience is nice. He speaks and everyone can ask questions, have input. We're going through Bhagavatam at a similar spot to where we are now, just a couple chapters back.
Can he give class here?
Yeah, he can give class here. If there's, you know, just good internet connections required, and he'll be happy to give here, and then whoever wants to attend can attend.
We did upgrade our internet from 200 Mbps to 600 Mbps for that reason.
Yay! Wow. Our internet is being boosted. But the point is that someone asked him in the context, I think, of Durvasa Muni, that, you know, we're reading that these great sages are always peaceful. It was some verse indicating that great rishis are peaceful. All of these good qualities I've just mentioned, you know, Tulya Ninda, Stutiramauni, they're silent, they're peaceful, Brahmanas, and yet we're seeing Durvasa Muni doesn't look very peaceful. He looks like he's ready to lash out at the slightest grievance. Ambarish, you know, drinks a little water to break his fast, and Durvasa Muni is like ready to kill the guy. Doesn't seem very peaceful. And one of the responses Maharaj gave was that austerities can make one a little bit more, you know, if someone insults you normally, you're okay, but hey, on Nirjala Ekadasi, don't be hitting me with any of that. You know, at the end of Nirjala Ekadasi, I'm ready to throw down the lock of hair and kill you with the Rakshasa demon, you know. So one of his points was that some of these great sages are performing severe austerities constantly. And so there is a certain energy, a certain potency, with especially those who are by nature a little more fiery, like Durvasa Muni. And I thought that was kind of a nice point also, is that we don't know the situation of another devotee. You don't know what they're going through, what their position of austerity is, what their life circumstance is. And, you know, someone cuts you off on the road, and you could get into some big road rage fit. But what if they're trying to get their wife to the hospital because she's about to give birth? You don't know what someone else's circumstances. You don't know if they've been having the most rotten day of their life, or what's happening. So sometimes a little bit of compassion for someone else's circumstance is warranted. In the case of Durvasa Muni, he's constantly performing severe austerities. There's naturally going to be a little heightened level of response if you offend. So, those are a few thoughts. I'll look into the purport again to see if there's something else I want to bring up in the meantime. Any comments, questions, corrections? Welcome. Especially corrections. I live to be corrected.
Jai Shri Panchatattva Ki.
I like this verse because it reminds me that that's how the Srimad Bhagawatam was pretty much told. Because didn't someone get mad at someone and curse someone?
Yeah, Shringi cursed Parikshit Maharaj.
And so I think that's like Krishna's mercy being chastised by a devotee or another Vaishnava. That just
Yeah,
reminds me of that.
It said in that section, it said that Parikshit Maharaj, being such a great devotee, could easily have overturned the curse. So that's another point, is that, everything is being orchestrated by the Supreme Lord in a very specific way to bring out wonderful outcomes. And by accepting that curse and by, taking it as a sign from Krishna, we get Srimad Bhagavatam, we get Brihad Bhagavatamrita, spoken by Parikshit Maharaj to his mother. So much nectar comes from that. Yeah, sweet, thank you.
So, is this verse where he's pivoting now Narayan, up till now Narayan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, has been advocating for the gatekeeper, saying that it's his fault, and now it looks like he's almost pivoting and glorifying the four Kumaras.
Yeah, he's pacifying,
Yeah.
just as I am pacifying you.
For a favor,
What's that?
because he's going to ask him for a favor.
Yeah, he said, my devotees, maybe you can shorten their sentence. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Flattering him
Just
up.
just as I am pacifying you. That's how the verse ends. It's so sweet, I really like that the son, it's described that the son is being sweet and pacifying the father. That's such a, I'm trying to think of the context of that, when that's come up in my life, or because I always picture my father as being very sweet and pacifying to me when I'm upset. To see it in the flip role is kind of interesting. That the son doesn't, he sees no wrong in the father. He's always smiling. Well, if there's nothing else to be said, then I'm sure breakfast is awaiting all the sweet devotees. Those who are unprotected. Oh, Daridra Narayana. I'm sorry, we should touch on that. That's sort of an important part of this verse. This Daridra Narayana, this concept that the poor man needs our assistance. And Prabhupada points out that actually everyone, why is the poor man any more in need of assistance than the rich man? Both are suffering in the material world. Both are spiritually poor. So to label someone Narayana, this sort of impersonal concept that everyone is Narayana, but even the poor people are even more so, is ridiculous. Jiva Goswami translates Narayana. He says Nara means the residence of Vrindavan. Ayana is the shelter. He says Krishna. He brings everything back to Krishna. It's really sweet. But Krishna, the shelter of the residence of Vrindavan, he's not a poor man. He is the most everything, all six opulences. So this silly statement that Daridra Narayana, that the poor man should be served as God, and Prabhupada is saying that actually everyone is. The point being made is that the Brahmanas and Vaishnavas specifically are the earthly representatives of Narayana. So even more so, service should be given to the Brahmanas and the Vaishnavas. And of course, the poor man should also be given Krishna consciousness. The rich man should be given
In
Krishna
a
consciousness.
modern context, so often justice is referred to as social justice. And it's described, the minute you put that adjective in front of justice, it's no longer justice. You know, social justice means you're not wearing blindfold as to whether the person is poor or rich or underprivileged or, you know, white, whatever they call it these
So on the
days.
spiritual level, that should be there. Spiritual social justice. You put blinds on as to whatever the condition the person is. Everyone should be liberally distributed. The holy name should be liberally distributed, prasad. It's so wonderful when we see the activities of Ranti Dev to recognize that what claim do I have over anything in this world? You know, I have my house, I have a certain amount of foodstuffs because I paid for it, therefore I own it, therefore it's mine. Someone else could be working just as hard as I work and not make as, you know, there's a whole background of karma, our previous actions that leads up to a certain material position. But it doesn't really mean that I have any more right to God's property than anyone else does. I'm being given, you know, a certain quota. Ma grida kasyas vidhanam. Don't encroach upon another person's quota. But whatever is within, you know, in care of, right? We always write, I always see that. In devotee bookshelves, you'll always pick up a Science of Self-Realization on the inside flap. ICO Madhavadas. You know, everything's in care of. I'm taking care of, for the moment, I have some facilities. But everyone has equal right to these facilities. If I can use this in charity and serving other Vaishnavas, it's theirs. What is mine is yours. And a very sweet and very high level of realization when it comes down to it, because we're always thinking in terms of mine and yours, my family, your family. That's how Maharaj was pointing out a month ago or something. The start of the whole Bhagavad Gita is like that. My sons and your sons. So this conception has to be rectified with the understanding that everything belongs to Krishna. And specifically, charity. What was it in the airport one time? Prabhupada was handed Mahaprasad, and the devotee said, "Oh, I should distribute to everyone at the airport?" Prabhupada said, "Start with the devotees." And he quoted, "Charity begins at home." So it's a sort of sweet understanding of, you know, specific attention to the Brahmanas, to the Vaishnavas. But on a larger scale, what we see in the example of Rantidev, this amazing level of charity, that even an animal, even whatever it is, everyone has equal right to everything, to all of God's creation. Some sweet thoughts. But Daridra Narayana, Prabhupada consistently disliked that term. Why should the poor man be a representative of Narayana? No, the Brahmanas, the Vaishnavas. And Prasada.